Welcome to Ask the Hiring Manager. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Ask the Hiring Manager. Today we have the beautiful Tangela Johnson with us. Tangela is a regional client specialist lead with First Horizon Bank with responsibility across 8 markets. She's held executive positions with her organization for over 15 years through its transition and mergers from Florida Bank to Iberia Bank to First Horizon. Tangela has managed and hired for client specialists and additional functions, with the scope of her responsibility expanding fivefold in employee oversight and fourfold in market jurisdiction. She's been recognized for First Horizon for her exemplary efforts and process improvements and has been sought out by the South Regional President to spearhead a number of additional processes, minimizing organizational risk. In addition to her day-to-day achievements at First Horizon, Tangela also serves as member of several associate resource groups, including the Black Inclusion Guild and the Southeast Women's Initiative. So excited to have you here, Tangela. Thanks so much for being my guest.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate you extending the opportunity. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, kind of jumping right in, you've held various management and executive positions in the banking sector, but your initial background was in accounting. So, I'm curious what attracted you to accounting. How long did you work in that space before your shift to being a client specialist manager?
Yeah, so the accounting side of the world naturally attracted me. Accounting requires structure, it requires things to be balanced. It's very detailed. Everything has its place in accounting. So, with a natural personality of appreciating balance, the balance side of things, I think accounting actually chose me. So that's kind of how I got into that world very early. So yeah, that's my deal with accounting.
Very cool. And then so you shifted obviously to the client specialist management position and role. So for those who don't know, what does this client specialist manager do?
Yeah. So a client specialist manager obviously tasked with managing the associates who are deemed client specialists. And what that looks like is full service on both loan side, deposit side. It's a client's initial contact, point of contact when they are reaching out to their bank or to the banking institution with questions, with servicing requests, anything that revolves around the relationship. A client specialist is responsible for managing that process.
Interesting. So it sounds like from starting in accounting by the nature of the job, which is more focused on number crunching. I know you like that balance.
Yes.
And whereas from what you're mentioning with the client specialist, it seems to be more people oriented from what you described. Was it an easy transition to make from accounting? And how did you sell yourself to get into the client services management role or client specialist manager role from accounting?
Yeah, so I think, Leslie, in banking, it's all a numbers game. It's numbers focused, numbers driven. So my background in accounting actually added that value in the transition to the client specialist side of the house. It is more people oriented. And I think that's part of what attracted me to being a client specialist. I love the numbers, but I love the human interaction with people. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to help people expand their businesses, to even handle their finances, and to give them an opportunity just to make things better. And that's what happens on the client specialist role. We have the opportunity to service clients with their business needs.
Very nice, very nice. And in what way do you work with these client specialists and develop them? Obviously, served as their manager. I'm curious about your day-to-day task and kind of guiding them.
Yeah, so it could be anything from training, group training, one on one training. It's all about professional development, their personal development. We get a chance to kind of dig into everything just because we spend so much time together. As a client specialist manager, it was my responsibility to figure out what's the next step for the client specialist. What direction are they wanting or interested in going? I would sit down with them, have those conversations. If it required more training, then it was my responsibility to figure out what that training looked like. If it was seeking out the next step, next opportunity, then together we would look for opportunities out there to see what interests them and try to get them prepared for that next opportunity.
Nice. And in addition to overseeing these client specialists, you've hired them as well. I'm curious, what attributes and skills did you look for or do you look for in a qualified client specialist?
Of course, we're looking for attention to detail. We're looking for people that want to add value, that are people focused, that understand the value of exceptional service. You know, it's something that's required. This is a oriented position. So I think we've all had experiences where we go out and we either get great service, sometimes we get not so great service, and the difference that makes in wherever it is that we are visiting. So we're looking for people that want to deliver that exceptional service to our clients.
Yes, I think that's the thing about service-oriented positions where it definitely matters how you're
Right,
interfacing and
right. I
details
agree.
important, but as you mentioned, just being good with customer service, client service, and all of
Right.
that. Very nice. And then, what are some questions that you may have asked client specialists during the interview process?
Yeah, so, I like to find out if they have a situation where maybe their ideas made a difference. They were able to add their experience and their expertise to a situation, and there was a change implemented as a result. I always like to ask about their communication skills, how they handle a breakdown in communication, what happens if there is a breakdown, just to see how resilient they are to pivoting if it so requires.
Yes, so that makes sense. So just kind of looking at how they can bounce back, as you mentioned, pivot, things like that. That's great.
Yes.
So this year you were promoted from a senior client specialist manager to a regional client specialist lead. What are the main differences in your former role versus your current position?
So I would say the main difference is, first of all, I don't have any direct reports. So I went from having over 20 direct reports to none.
Wow.
And that's good and bad. It requires a different skill set. In the role that I have now, I'm more of an influencer. So I am going into different markets, partnering with those markets, helping them focus on their key performance indicators, making sure that they are meeting their target for what the organization expects, and doing it in a way that it's in a more of a partnership role versus a management role.
Sure.
So it's tricky sometimes, but it's also very rewarding.
Nice. And then I know that you mentioned you currently have no direct reports, but I believe that you still are involved with hiring. So, what type of roles do you hire for now or that you assist in hiring for?
Yeah. So now in any of the markets before a client specialist is hired, that has to come through me. And it's a collaborative effort. We start out, our HR department will typically screen the candidates first. If they are a fit during the screening, it gets passed on to the hiring manager, the local team. So that could consist of the hiring manager, the market president, the lenders that the potential candidate would be working with. And then if that candidate is a fit with the local team, then it's passed on to me. So I just kind of high level try to ask different questions than what the local team would be focusing on, to see if the candidate truly is a fit. And then together we will regroup and determine which candidate best fits the culture.
Okay, nice. So you, right, still play a very large role, as you mentioned, even though it is a collaborative effort. It sounds like a lot of the candidates do have to, in a sense, get your approval before kind of going to that next level. I'm curious, anything more that you'd like to say about the steps of the hiring process that you and your team conduct? For example, if there's several rounds of interviews, et cetera.
Yeah, well, there's usually two rounds of interviews because the first round is high level. We choose several candidates, and those candidates are passed on, to like the second round, if you would, of interviewing. And there we'll ask more specific questions and get to a final decision in that round. And I'd like to mention something you asked about the process in my previous role, what
Yes.
type of interviews I was involved in. That was a great opportunity that my regional president afforded to me to be involved in interviewing in several different positions. Uh, a few of those positions included like our lenders, the lenders that we were going to bring on could be portfolio managers, credit analysts, even our market president. I've been involved in choosing that individual.
Hmm.
And that was really interesting because there are so many different skill sets that you're looking for, depending on which role you're hiring for. So I really appreciate her giving me that opportunity to be involved. It just lets you know that even though it's all an interview with potential clients, that there are different attributes that you should be aware of and looking for.
Yes, thanks for sharing that. And that goes perfectly into what I had in mind for my next question to you, which was, what are some of the attributes that you and your team look for in qualified candidates, or maybe differences that you look for between, as you mentioned, maybe a portfolio manager versus a credit analyst versus market president?
Yeah.
We have time, so feel free to go
Okay.
to as much as you'd like.
All right. Well, I would say, on the credit side, which would include a credit analyst and a portfolio manager, obviously we're looking for folks with credit training, a credit background. When you look at interviewing for a relationship manager or lender, you're looking for someone with sales experience. And when you move up to the market president level, you're looking for someone that encompasses all of the above. You
Yes.
want your leader to, of course, be sales focused, have a credit background. They have to be people driven so that they support people or associates at every level. So, a couple different things depending on what it is that you're part of the interview process for.
Absolutely. Thanks for breaking down some of those differences and different skills that are looked for without the
Yes.
difference, right? Credit side versus even the market president. Now, that market president has been already hired. This was in the last couple of years.
Yes, this was 2, maybe 3 years ago. So he is in place. We are happy to have him, and he's doing an amazing job.
Awesome. And that's great that you were part of that process to bring him in.
Yes.
Great. What are some pros and cons that you look for or have seen on a resume?
Well, obviously, I mean, some of the cons, I'll go there first because
Good.
when things are not right, somehow that sticks in your mind the most.
That's true.
So I will say, simple things like grammatical errors, chronological gaps, things of that nature. I will say the pros will be the differences in the way that people present their skills, their experience. The resume is, if you will, sort of a branding of really of
Absolutely.
who you are. So very important.
It's extremely important, 100%. And obviously, as you mentioned, yes, no spelling errors, things of that sort. For you, especially in the bank, when you mention gaps in employment, being in the banking sector, two questions here. I'm assuming that it's better if you don't see a gap. If you do see a gap, is there kind of a no-no on how long that gap should be based on the positions for which you hire?
Well, I would say it depends. If the client has overall great experience and otherwise looks really polished, and I think that it's a benefit to maybe if you want to move forward with speaking with that individual, find out why there's a gap. Sometimes there are valid reasons for there to be a gap. You know, life happens. Could be something that happened personally where that person needed to take a break, so I would say not to focus strictly on gaps, but just in conjunction with everything else, consider it. And if the person looks like someone you would be interested in hiring, then maybe find out the specifics of the gap.
Yes, 100%. And that's good. I think that's good that you mentioned that because nowadays, although of course, if there's someone that has recurring gaps all the time, that's one thing. But if it is
Right.
a one-off, I think it is a case by case basis and kind of taking that extra step, especially if someone normally has a pretty decent track record to determine why was this occurring because it does seem out of inconsistent, I guess, with
Right.
the past trend. Okay, that's good. And then in terms, something that just came to mind as well is in terms of the banking sector and or roles for which you've hired, are you looking for a candidate to be in former roles for a specific amount of time?
No, not necessarily. I think it just depends on the role. There's not necessarily a required amount of time. Sometimes people get into a role maybe to get in the door, but they may have more experience than what the role requires. Once they get in there, something else opens up. I think from a HR point of view, sometimes there are requirements. Maybe they want someone to be in a role for maybe a year or 6 months or whatever. But I think there's always an avenue to work around that if you have a really good candidate and they've gotten in just to get their foot in the door, but they do have other related experience that may warrant them transferring or moving up, then the opportunity is always there.
Great, great. Thanks for your feedback there.
Mhm.
Do you feel that there is value in mock interviews? And I'm curious if you have implemented them in your training or hiring related processes.
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, I actually love mock interviews. In my current role, I have some very new managers, and these managers have been tasked with hiring associates to their team. If you've done that before, then it's an easy task. But if you haven't, what does that look like? What does the hiring process look like? So, to assist these managers with this process, I actually set up a few mock interviews and invited them to sit through just so they would understand what questions are we asking, how to identify whether someone has transferable skills, how to look for skills versus talents, whether someone fits your culture, whether it would be an easy task. If you have a team of experienced associates and you're going to bring on someone that may not have that experience, do you have the room for that, the capacity to take that on? So I think that's all discovered through interviews and through that process. So mock interviews for managers that may not be accustomed to interviewing was really valuable for me.
Yes, I'm sure. And I'm sure valuable for you and valuable to that manager for which you're helping, and then to the organization. I'm sure that these mock interviews can help the process be more thoughtful and probably effective as well.
Right.
And yeah, help the manager to think about, okay, what are we really truly looking for here? And I'm sure that
That's
that's
right.
helped in different capacities. So that's great that you're involved that you involve mock interviews in your process. Absolutely.
Right.
Do you feel it's difficult for individuals to transition from one line of business to another?
I don't know if I would say difficult. And I think it really depends on the line of business. Obviously, if you have someone who's never been responsible for underwriting or not familiar with the credit side, if they're trying to move into a role that is all underwriting, all credit based, that would be a challenge without that individual getting some formal training. I would say it's probably a longer process than maybe someone moving from the retail side into a more servicing side, loan side. Those two go more hand in hand. So I think it just depends on, the line of business that you're transferring from and into.
Yes, absolutely. Would you give any advice or tips for individuals who are interested in transitioning to another line of business? I know that there's different lines, so you can give that generally, or if there's any two lines that you want to specifically advise on, feel
Yeah,
free.
I would just say in general, find out about the role that you're interested in, find out what the expectations are, and then just be honest with yourself. Do you have what's required? Is it something that you can go out and be trained on fairly quickly? You feel you have transferable skills that may easily add value to the next role? So I would just say find out what the requirements are and prepare yourself as much as possible.
Yes, and I like that you mentioned the transferable skills because that is so important. I mean, even when I'm working with clients all of the time that are looking to make, it doesn't always even have to be major moves, but different moves within
Right.
their career or job positions. Just the transferable skills are so key, and I think highlighting those not only on a resume but an interview, I'm sure, as well, emphasizing those skills where it comes front and center to the hiring managers that, okay, maybe they haven't done this exactly in the role in which I or hiring manager know it to be, but clearly they've exhibited transferable skills where they can perform those functions in the new
Right.
roles. So I think that's super, super important to mention. Yes.
Yes.
And so you've been in the banking sector for over 30 years. By the way, I don't know how that's possible because you must have started at like two or something if you've been in it for over
I
30 years.
appreciate that.
However, being in the
Yes.
banking sector for over 30 years, I'm curious from a diversity perspective, if you've observed a change over time in the amount of people of color as well as women in banking.
Yeah, I will say that I really have. And it's forward movement, which I'm very thankful for.
Good.
I will say, I started banking in high school.
Oh,
And when I
wow.
first entered the banking world, I mean, there were very few people that looked like me and looked like you. Um, but over the years, that's really changed. And I will say for the organization here, I mean, it's very important. There's a focus. I mean, we do even have associate resource groups. We have, you mentioned the Black Inclusion Guild. So it's an associate resource group for folks that look like us. And it's something that's supported by the organization. So I'm thankful. Um, on the commercial side of banking, I will say when I first started, it was very male dominant. That's starting to change. We have a lot of female lenders. Obviously, my regional president is a female, and she is definitely supportive of us on her team. She's supportive of everyone, but of course, for the women,
Yeah.
anytime we need her, she's got that connection. You can go right to her. So there's definitely a change and there's definitely forward momentum.
That's great. And I love that. And I feel like women in the professional world, although it's great, of course, to be inclusive and supportive to everyone, it's nice to feel like you are built up by other women and or people
Right.
of color that understand. So that's great.
Yes.
And I'm glad you have that relationship with the regional president like that as well. So great. Do you feel that there should be initiatives to empower and elevate more women into banking leadership roles? And this can extend not just within your bank, but in general.
Yeah, in general, I think it's very important. We want to make sure that any minority, that there's an opportunity for elevation in different lines of business, especially in banking. So I'm always excited to see that there are initiatives that's, pushing woman power.
Yes, all about that. All about that. Are
Yes.
are there any particular roles that First Horizon is hiring for that you'd like to promote or mention to potential job seekers out there?
I don't know if there are particular roles, but I would just like to say, First Horizon as an organization overall, amazing place to work. Obviously, I am headed into my 18th year with the combined
Wow.
organization. So I would just say if there are folks out there looking for employment, take a look, go to the website, see what might interest you. And I think you'll find that it's a great place to be.
Yes. And is that website firsthorizon.com or what is
It
that
is.
website?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
perfect. Didn't even
Firsthorizon.com.
know. So great. Guys, check out firsthorizon.com, especially those interested in the banking sector. That's great.
That's right.
And then my last question would be, are there any additional tips or general advice that you'd like to provide to job seekers?
Yes. First, I want to say get your resume completed or, done by a professional resume
I
writer.
support
Leslie,
that.
thank you. That's right. Yours truly. Thank you for the work that you did with me and the way we were able to connect. But what I will say is that, that's branding. It really represents who you are before you ever have an opportunity to step into the room. So if you really want to separate yourself, your resume is going to be the way to do that first. Secondly, I would say personal development. Any type of personal development, strengthening that you can get involved with for yourself, coaching, just any way to identify like who you are as a person, as a leader, how do you manage? How are your communication skills? I mean, for me, I've been involved extensively in professional coaching with Elizabeth Halacki. I'm going to spell that last name because I want anyone listening to understand what I'm saying. Elizabeth Halacki is a strengths coach. She's part of the Clifton Strengths team. Last name Hladky.
Yes.
If you are interested in separating yourself and really learning who you are, how to elevate your leadership skills, I would say go out and find her and make that investment in yourself. So again, I'm going to say your resume, have it professionally done, and then personal investment about who you are, how you communicate, what your leadership style is. Make those investments.
Yes, I agree with that completely, and including on the personal development side. By the way, as you know, because that's how we met,
That's right.
I also shout out to Elizabeth Latke, Hladky.
That's
Just
right.
like that. She is a phenomenal coach and a phenomenal individual as well. And I've had clients as well seek out her personal development help and have had nothing but wonderful things to say and results, getting the
That's
jobs that
right.
they wanted. So I also back what you said about, of course, resume development, personal
Mhm.
development, and then specifically, Elizabeth is a great person to go to for those who may need some coaching, whether that's interview coaching, strengths coaching as well. So
That's
yes,
right.
well, those are great
Mhm.
tips overall, and I've really enjoyed my discussion with you today and having you as a guest on. So thank you again, Tangela, for all your wonderful feedback. I'm sure it's a value add to our listeners and to job seekers out there, including in the banking
Yes.
sector.
Thank you. My pleasure. I appreciate you having me.
Of course. And of course, thanks to all our viewers and listeners. And stay tuned for the next episode of Ask the Hiring Manager. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Welcome to Ask the Hiring Manager. I'm Leslie Hunter, president of Resume Makeover. I've been helping job seekers for nearly a decade to acquire their dream jobs and achieve the income they desire, from entry-level applicants to C-suite executives and everyone in between. From your resume to your cover letter, LinkedIn profile, bio, or website content, I'm here for you. And now I'm going to open the door and interview some of the top hiring managers so that you can have the insight that you need to book the jobs that you want. Welcome to Ask the Hiring Manager.